For decades, we were told a lie. The scientific consensus of the 20th century was cold and uncompromising. It suggested that your brain was like a computer, hardwired by the time you reached adulthood. You were told that you were born with a certain number of neurons, and as you aged, they simply died off. That your personality, your intelligence, and your capacity to change were set in stone. They called it the fixed brain paradigm, and it was a prison sentence. But in the dark corners of laboratories and through the resilience of patients who defied medical logic, a new truth emerged. A truth that changes everything you think you know about your potential. It's called neuroplasticity. It is the biological proof that you are a work in progress. Your brain is not a static organ, it is a dynamic, living electrical storm that physically reshapes its own architecture based on what you do, what you think, and what you endure. Right now, as you hear these words, your brain is changing. It is physically different than it was 60 seconds ago. The you that started this video is already becoming obsolete. The question isn't whether your brain can change. The question is, who is holding the chisel? Are you a passive observer of your own biology, or are you the architect? In this video, we are going to look at the machinery of change. We're going to look at the miracle grow of the mind, the speed of thought, and how you can literally think a new version of yourself into existence. Welcome to Momentum Crew. To understand how you change, we have to zoom in past the bone and the tissue, down to the microscopic gaps where your soul meets your biology. This is the synapse. Every thought you have, every movement you make, is a pulse of electricity jumping across these gaps. When you do something for the first time, like picking up a new instrument or practicing a difficult equation, that connection is faint. It's like a hiker trying to push through a dense, overgrown forest. It's slow. It's exhausting. It requires immense conscious effort. But here is where the magic of neuroplasticity happens. There is a rule in neuroscience known as Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together, wire together. When you repeat an action or a thought, your brain decides that this pathway is important. It begins to physicalize that importance. It sends out builders to strengthen the connection. First, the synapse itself grows. It develops more receptors, making it more sensitive to the signal. But then, the brain brings in the heavy machinery. Myelin. Myelin is a fatty tissue that wraps around your nerve fibers like insulation around an electrical wire. It prevents leaking of the signal and allows the electricity to travel up to 100 times faster. This is why, after enough practice, the thing that used to be impossible becomes second nature. You aren't just better at the task, you have physically upgraded the bandwidth of your nervous system. You have paved the forest trail into a high-speed fiber optic highway. You aren't just learning, you are building a faster machine. But there's a catch. The brain is an energy-expensive organ. It won't build these highways for free. It requires a specific signal to start the construction. A signal that most of us spend our lives trying to avoid. Most people think that when they feel frustrated, they are failing. When you try to learn something complex and your brain feels heavy, when you experience that distinct, uncomfortable friction of not getting it, our instinct is to stop. We assume that because it's hard, we aren't built for it. But the molecular reality is exactly the opposite. That friction, that is the sound of the engine turning over. That is the exact moment change becomes possible. To change an adult brain, you have to shock it out of its baseline state. Your brain is a survival machine, and it hates wasting energy. It will only rewire itself if it is convinced that its current wiring is inadequate for survival. When you push through difficulty and experience frustration, your nervous system releases two critical chemicals: epinephrine, which increases your focus and alertness, and acetylcholine, which acts like a highlighter pen for your synapses. Acetylcholine marks the specific neural pathways that are making mistakes, signaling to the brain, pay attention, this pathway didn't work, we need to fix this. Without that frustration, those chemicals are never released. Without those chemicals, the brain doesn't know what to change. The struggle is not the barrier to growth, the struggle is the growth. When you feel that mental burn, you aren't hitting a wall. You are turning on the light in the construction site. If you walk away when it gets hard, you turn the lights off before the builders can even arrive. Here is one of the greatest paradoxes of human biology. You do not actually change while you are working. During the day, when you are practicing, studying, or struggling, you are merely setting the stage. You are marking the pathways, digging the trenches, and turning on the construction lights with acetylcholine and epinephrine. But the actual heavy lifting, the literal physical rewiring, happens when you step away. It happens when you enter the dark. The real magic of neuroplasticity occurs during deep sleep and states of deep rest. When your conscious mind shuts down, your brain's glymphatic system opens up, washing away metabolic waste. But more importantly, your brain begins to replay the neural firing patterns you practiced during the day. It plays them back at hyperspeed, thousands of times over, reinforcing those specific connections. During sleep, an essential molecule called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, goes to work. Scientists call BDNF the miracle grow of the brain. It is a protein that stimulates the growth, maturation, and maintenance of new neurons and synapses. But it only performs its best work when the noise of the world is turned off. If you outwork everyone but ignore your rest, you are building a bridge halfway across a canyon and stopping before it connects to the other side. You are giving your brain the command to change, but denying it the raw materials and the time to execute the order. True mastery isn't just about how hard you can push, it's about how deeply you can recover. The grind prepares the blueprint, but the rest builds the house. But we must tread carefully. Neuroplasticity is a double-edged sword. It is completely blind to your intentions. The brain doesn't care if a pathway is good for you or bad for you. It only cares if that pathway is used. This is the dark side of plasticity. Every time you indulge in a loop of self-doubt, every time you give in to anxiety, or spend hours scrolling in a dopamine-depleted haze, you are firing those exact neurons. And remember Hebb's law, neurons that fire together, wire together. If you constantly practice worry, your brain gets exceptionally good at worrying. It wraps those anxious pathways in myelin. It turns a temporary mood into a permanent high-speed highway of despair. You can accidentally sculpt a prison out of your own mind, but this is exactly where your power lies. Because if you built the prison, you possess the keys to tear it down. This brings us to the ultimate law of behavioral change. Pruning. In the brain, if a pathway is left unused, the brain decides it's a waste of energy. It sends out cellular cleanup crews to physically snip the connections. This is how habits die, not by fighting them, but by starving them of attention. When you choose to stop feeding the old loop and consciously redirect your focus elsewhere, the old highway literally disappears. This is not metaphor. This is not pop psychology. This is hard, unyielding molecular biology. Think about what this means for your life. Every genius you admire, every athlete who looks superhuman, every leader who seems unshakable, they do not possess a different kind of brain than you. They have simply run different programs through the same biological machine. They leaned into the frustration, endured the friction, protected their rest, and relentlessly ran the circuits of who they wanted to become. Look at your hands. Look at your life. Look at where you are standing right now. You are currently living in the physical architecture of your past thoughts and habits. But you are not trapped there. The brain you have right now is simply the rough draft. You are the author. You are the scientist, the sculptor, and the monument all at once. Stop waiting for inspiration to strike before you change. Strike the match yourself through deliberate, uncomfortable action. Force the epinephrine to flood your system. Force the acetylcholine to mark the path. The machinery is already sitting inside your skull, waiting in the dark, perfectly optimized and ready to rebuild you. It is a biological guarantee that you can evolve, so let the old pathways wither away. The construction site is open. It's time to start building.